Hello, everyone. I am Mr. X Black. I am here to help you today. I know you watch videos before sleeping. So before that, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment. Where are you from? And what time are you watching? Let's relax with me at horror stories with rain sounds and black-green save energy. Have a good night. Good evening. I want to thank you for joining me tonight. What I'm about to share with you isn't fiction. I wish it were. My name is Michael Holloway, and for 23 years, I was a night custodian at Blackwood Heights High School in rural Massachusetts. What happened there changed me forever. I've kept silent for too long, but the dreams won't stop, and the voices keep getting louder. You might not believe me. That's fine. I wouldn't believe me either. But I need to tell someone. Anyone. Before it's too late. I started working at Blackwood Heights in the fall of 1997. It was just a job at first. Decent pay, health insurance, and nights meant I could take classes during the day. The school had been built in 1924 with additions in the 50s and 70s. From the outside, it looked like any other aging public school. Red brick, 3 stories, surrounded by oak trees that had been there longer than the building itself. My first few months were uneventful. I'd arrive at 10 p.m. after the evening activities had ended. The building would be empty except for the occasional teacher working late. I'd clean the classrooms, mop the hallways, and be out by 6 a.m. Simple, peaceful even. The first incident happened in November. I was buffing the floor in the main corridor when I heard a locker slam on the second floor. Not unusual. The building settled at night. Metal contracted as the temperature dropped. But then I heard footsteps. Running footsteps. I called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" My voice echoed through the empty halls. No response. I took the stairs to the second floor. The hallway stretched out before me, a tunnel of darkness punctuated by the dim emergency lights. Every locker was closed. No sign of anyone. As I turned to leave, I felt a cold draft brush against my neck. November in Massachusetts. Drafts weren't uncommon. But this felt like someone had pressed an ice cube against my skin. And there was something else. A whisper. So faint I almost missed it. "Find me." I spun around. Nothing. Just rows of lockers and closed classroom doors. That night, I told myself it was my imagination. The mind plays tricks when you're alone in a big, empty building at night. I'd been watching too many horror movies, working too many hours, not sleeping enough. I was wrong. The next few weeks were quiet. December came, and with it, the first real snowfall. The school felt different in winter, the darkness outside pressing against the windows, the heating system groaning as it fought against the cold. I was cleaning the boys' bathroom near the gym when I heard it. A girl's voice, singing softly. It was coming from inside one of the stalls. "Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies." I cleared my throat. "Excuse me? The building's closed. You need to leave." The singing stopped. I pushed open each stall door. Empty. All of them. As I left the bathroom, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then darkness. The emergency lights kicked on, casting everything in a sickly green glow. And then, from behind me, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran all the way to the maintenance office and locked the door behind me. I called security, told them I thought there might be someone in the building. They found nothing. No sign of entry. No footprints in the fresh snow outside. Nothing on the security cameras. "You're working too hard, Mike," the head of security told me. "This place can get to you if you let it." I nodded, but I knew what I'd heard, what I'd felt. The next day, I asked one of the older teachers about the school's history. Mrs. Donovan had been teaching English at Blackwood for over 30 years. If anyone knew the building's secrets, it would be her. Secrets. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Every school has its stories, Mr. Holloway. Most are just that, stories." I pressed her. "Have you ever heard anything unusual? At night, maybe." She hesitated. "There was an incident. Before my time. A student went missing in 1962. Sarah Pembroke. They never found her. What happened? Mrs. Donovan lowered her voice. The official story is that she ran away. But there were rumors. She was having trouble with some of the other girls. Bullying was different back then. Less visible, but no less cruel. Some say she was locked in a closet or a locker as a prank. That she died there. That they covered it up. That's horrible, I said. It's just a story, Mr. Holloway. She gathered her papers. Just a story. But it wasn't just a story. And it wasn't just Sarah Pembroke. January brought a severe cold snap. The pipes in the West Wing froze and burst, flooding several classrooms. The school closed for repairs, and I was tasked with helping the maintenance crew clean up the mess. While moving some cabinets in one of the older classrooms, I discovered a small door about 3 feet high, hidden behind them. It wasn't on any of the building plans I'd seen. "What's this?" I asked Tim, the head of maintenance. He shrugged. "Old buildings have all sorts of quirks. Probably a utility access from when they did renovations in the 50s. But there was something about that door. Something that made my skin crawl. I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, after everyone had left, I returned with a crowbar. The door was stuck, the wood swollen with age and dampness. It took all my strength to pry it open. Beyond was a narrow passage, barely wide enough for an adult to crawl through. The smell that wafted out was overwhelming. Mold, decay, and something else. Something metallic and sickly sweet. I should have called someone. The principal, the police, anyone. But curiosity, a morbid, terrible curiosity, drove me forward. I grabbed my flashlight and entered the passage. The tunnel sloped downward, deeper than the school's foundation should have allowed. The walls were rough-hewn, like someone had carved them out by hand. After about 20 feet, the passage opened into a small chamber. My flashlight beam revealed crude drawings on the walls, stick figures, strange symbols, and words written in what looked like, oh God, it looked like dried blood. "We are the forgotten. The halls remember." She watches. In the center of the room was a pile of objects. School items from different eras, a saddle shoe from the 50s, a mood ring from the 70s, a Walkman from the 80s. And photographs, dozens of them, yellowed with age. Students, all with their faces scratched out. Except one, a school portrait of a girl with dark hair and sad eyes. On the back, in faded ink, Sarah Pembroke, 1962. As I stared at the photo, the temperature in the chamber plummeted. My breath clouded in front of me. "You found me." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. I dropped the photo and scrambled backward, my flashlight beam wildly scanning the chamber. That's when I saw her, a figure standing in the corner. A girl in an outdated school uniform, her face obscured by shadows. "Sarah?" My voice was barely a whisper. She stepped forward, into the light. What I saw wasn't human. Not anymore. Her face was gaunt, the skin gray and stretched tight over her skull. Her eyes were black pits, leaking a dark substance that might have been tears or blood. Her mouth opened, wider than any human mouth should, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. Not just Sarah. We are many. I ran, crawled through the passage as fast as I could, scratching my hands and knees raw on the rough stone. Behind me, I heard them. Whispers, giggles, the sound of many feet. I burst out of the small door and slammed it shut, pushing the cabinet back against it with trembling hands. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. When I finally returned to work, the cabinet had been moved again. The door was open, and on the chalkboard in that classroom, written in a childish scrawl, "Thank you for finding us. Now we can come out and play." The next months were a nightmare. Things would move when I wasn't looking. I'd set down a mop and turn to find it across the room. Doors would lock or unlock by themselves. Lights would flicker in patterns. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS. And the voices. Always the voices. "Help us. Join us. We're hungry." I tried to tell the principal, Mr. Hargrove. He listened politely, then suggested I take some time off. Stress can manifest in strange ways, Mike, he said. Have you considered talking to someone? In March, a sophomore named Tyler Reynolds stayed late to work on a science project. They found him the next morning in the biology lab, catatonic, staring at the wall and repeating the same phrase over and over. The hollows in the walls. The hollows in the walls. He was hospitalized, diagnosed with sudden-onset schizophrenia. But I knew better. I'd seen the hollows, spaces between the walls where the old building didn't quite match up with its additions. Spaces where something could hide. Watch. Wait. In April, 3 students broke into the school at night on a dare. One was found wandering the streets at dawn with no memory of what happened. The other 2 were never found. The official story was that they'd run away together, but their phones, wallets, and backpacks were still in the school. I searched for them. Every night, I'd look in every classroom, every closet, every hidden corner of that cursed building. Instead, I found others. A janitor's logbook from 1973, hidden in an air duct. The last entry, they're in the walls. God help me, I can hear them scratching to get out. A collection of teeth, human teeth, behind a loose brick in the boiler room. A yearbook from 1989 with certain students' eyes meticulously scratched out. Next to one boy's photo, a handwritten note. He's next. That boy, I discovered, had disappeared during a lock-in event that same year. Another runaway. How many? How many children had that school taken over the decades? And why hadn't anyone connected the dots? But they had. They just didn't want to see. In the teacher's lounge one day, I overheard 2 veteran teachers talking in hushed tones. Another one transferred. One said, "That makes 3 this year. They never last when they get that classroom." The other replied, "Room 237 has always been." They noticed me and fell silent. Later, I checked the school records. Room 237 had gone through 6 different teachers in the past decade. 3 had quit mid-year, citing health issues. 1 had committed suicide. 2 had been committed to psychiatric facilities. That night, I went to room 237. It was an ordinary classroom. Desks, chairs, a whiteboard. Nothing unusual. But the air felt thick, hard to breathe, and cold. So cold. I set up a digital recorder and left it overnight. What I heard the next morning still haunts me. Hours of silence. Then at exactly 3:17 a.m., children laughing. Dozens of them. A girl's voice, singing that same nursery rhyme. A boy, crying, begging, "Please, I want to go home. I want my mom." Another voice, deeper, inhuman. "There is no home. There is only us. There is only the hollow." Then screaming. God, the screaming. I took the recording to the police. They said it was clearly a prank, probably some students I'd caught vandalizing and was trying to get back at them. They didn't even finish listening to it. So I went to the local newspaper. The reporter seemed interested, asked for a copy of the recording. A week later, she called to say her editor had killed the story. No reason given. That's when I realized they knew. Everyone knew. The town, the school board, maybe even some of the parents. They just pretended not to. Because what else could they do? Close the school? Admit that generations of children had been sacrificed to whatever lived in those walls. In my desperation, I began researching. Old town records, historical societies, interviews with retired teachers. I found patterns. Every 27 years, the disappearances spiked. 1935, 1962, 1989, 2016 was next. I also found references to the land before the school was built. It had belonged to a religious sect in the 1800s, a splinter group with beliefs mixing Christianity with something older. They believed in thin places, locations where the barrier between worlds was weaker, places where entities could cross over if given the right incentive. The sect had performed rituals there, sacrifices. Then they vanished, all of them, in a single night in 1873. The land remained empty for decades until the town decided it was the perfect spot for a school. As 2016 approached, I noticed changes in the building. The walls seemed to pulse, like something was pushing from the other side. The whispers grew louder, more desperate, and I began to see them, shadow figures darting just at the edge of my vision. Children with hollow eyes and gaping mouths. Some in clothes from the 60s, some in modern dress. The hollows were getting full. They needed more room, more vessels. In October 2016, the school announced a special event, an overnight lock-in for the senior class. A tradition, they called it, though I'd never heard of it before. 127 students would be spending the night in the school, supervised by just 5 teachers. I knew what was going to happen. I couldn't let it. The night of the lock-in, I broke into the school early and hid in the maintenance closet. I had a plan: pull the fire alarm, get everyone out. Simple. But as the students arrived, laughing and excited, I felt it. The building was hungry. The walls thrummed with anticipation. The floors seemed to tilt subtly, hurting the teenagers towards certain areas. Room 237. The gym. The old theater in the basement. At midnight, the power went out. Emergency lights bathed everything in that sickly green glow. I heard the principal's voice over the battery-powered PA system, calm, reassuring, telling everyone to stay where they were, that everything was fine. I made my way to the alarm, but before I could reach it, I heard the screaming start. Not fear, pain, terrible pain. I ran toward the sound, toward the gym. The doors were chained shut from the outside. Inside, I could hear chaos, shouting, crying, the sound of something wet and heavy dragging across the floor. Through the small windows in the doors, I saw it. The gym floor had opened, split apart to reveal a pulsing darkness below. Teachers were herding students toward it. Some fought. Some walked willingly, their eyes vacant, mouths stretched in ecstatic smiles. And rising from that pit, tendrils, hundreds of them, writhing, grabbing, pulling students down into the darkness. But not before emptying them. Their bodies seemed to collapse in on themselves, like something essential was being extracted. Their eyes turned black, then hollow, as they sank into their skulls. The teachers, the goddamn teachers were helping, chanting in some language I'd never heard. Their faces transformed in the green light, older, twisted, inhuman. One of them saw me, Principal Hargrove, but it wasn't him anymore. His face stretched and split, revealing rows of teeth and black, viscous fluid. He smiled. "Join us, Michael. There's room for one more in the hollow." I ran. God help me, I ran. Out of the school, into my car, drove until I hit the state line. I called the police from a payphone, gave an anonymous tip about the lock-in. Then I kept driving. The next day, I checked the news. Nothing about Blackwood Heights High School. Nothing about missing students. A week later, a small article. Gas leak at local high school causes hallucinations, mass hysteria. No casualties reported. School closed for repairs. I drove back, just to see. The school looked the same. Students came and went, but they weren't all the same students. And they weren't all complete. Some moved wrong, like puppets with too few strings. Some had eyes that reflected light like animals. Some didn't cast shadows. I watched a girl laugh with her friends. Her mouth opened too wide, stretching ear to ear. No one noticed, or no one wanted to notice. I never went back to Blackwood Heights. I changed my name, moved across the country. But the dreams followed. In them, I'm back in that chamber beneath the school. The photos are different now. New faces, all with their eyes scratched out. Except mine. Mine they've left intact, so I can see what's coming. That was 9 years ago. I've been running ever since. Moving from town to town, never staying long enough to draw attention. But I know they're looking for me. The only witness. The only one who knows the truth. Sometimes I see them. A student with hollow eyes at a bus stop. A teacher whose smile stretches too wide at a coffee shop. They're spreading, breaking free from Blackwood Heights, finding new hunting grounds. Last week, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a Blackwood Heights High School yearbook from 2023. Every student's face was scratched out, except one, a freshman girl with sad eyes. On her photo, handwritten, "She is the new vessel. The hollow grows." And a note, in childish handwriting, "We miss you, Mr. Holloway. There's still room for you. There's always room in the hollow." I'm tired of running, so I'm telling you this story, spreading it as far as I can. Because maybe, just maybe, if enough people know, they'll be forced to see, to act. Or maybe I'm just hoping that when they finally find me, and they will find me, someone will remember. Someone will ask questions. Someone will look at the hollows in the walls and wonder what lives there. If you're listening to this, please, be careful of old schools at night. Listen for the whispers. Watch for the hollows. And if you hear children laughing when there should be none, run. Don't look back. Just run. Because the hollow is hungry. And it's growing. And now, it knows you've heard its story. Sweet dreams.